Hello, and welcome to the Wooden Ball Show. I'm your host, Dave Ball, also known as Blinson on Reddit and at Blinson1 on Twitter. And like always, I'm joined by my partner in crime, Blake, who is known as at ShatMyKirk on Twitter and BTomBomb on Reddit. And today we are joined by Sadie. You can follow her on Twitter at HockeyBabbler or on Reddit at Sadie. So how you guys doing?
Hello, hello. Doing swell.
Hey there. I've been better. I've been worse. It's been a hell of an off season.
Your Sharks have had fun this off season.
Ah, yes. Oh, John Scott, I'm so excited for the reign of the of the horrible alternate captain times two that we will have coming into this season.
So this week we're going to be covering the St. Louis Blues and the San Jose Sharks. So without further ado, I guess we'll just head started into it. First off, it's going to be San Jose Sharks, and that will be Blake starting the questions.
Hello, hello. Once again, I welcome Sadie into the podcast, for we will, like Dave said, begin discussion with the San Jose Sharks. A rather colorful discussion, to say the least. For those of you that have been following the NHL, and it's been quite a postseason and off-season for the Sharks. And we'll begin, though, starting with a overview of the regular season. As you know, San Jose is located in California, in the Bay Area, and they're that triumvirate of the three-headed monster of the California teams with LA and Anaheim. And they've been tearing up the Pacific Division as well as most of the NHL in the regular season. But Sadie, just give us some more insight into the regular season that was.
Yeah. Stop me if you've heard this one before. You know, things look really great in October and November, and the team looks really strong, and everyone starts saying, "Man, this might be their year. This might be their year." And they have a couple of stumbles here and there, some injuries. And then we go into the postseason, and everyone's feeling pretty optimistic. But this seems to happen every single year. It's rather distressing, actually. But we had a beautiful October this last season, but that seems to be the case nearly every year. Our record in October was 10-1-2, and that's pretty damn good. And we of course had that beautiful game of Tomas Hertl's, his third game, where he had the 4 goals. He just sort of exploded into the NHL, and it was gorgeous. We came out of October feeling like this was definitely the year. There was no way that this year we were going to choke. And of course, November was we finally hit a little bit of a stumbling block. As we were nearing the end. December, not great. It was pretty bad. Then December and January were both. We could not seem to win against teams that were terrible, but we were perfectly fine against teams that were great, which is intensely frustrating. We had that game against Edmonton where we were shut out on, I believe it was 56 shots, if I'm remembering the number correctly. Some ridiculously high number, and we were shut out by Ben Skirvins. It hurts so much. But we kind of picked it back up coming into February, March, and the beginning of April. It wasn't great, but it was good, and everyone was feeling really optimistic going into these playoffs. Although we were disappointed in the fact that we went second in the Pacific rather than first, because that meant that we would have to play the Kings in the first round, and as we will find out in a moment, that's a terrible thing.
Yes, with the exception of the optimism heading into the playoffs, there's a few reasons there why I like to refer to San Jose as the Blues of the Pacific. But now we do head into the postseason, and there isn't really much else I can say for those of you that do follow the NHL, as I assume most people that listen to this podcast do. It was a very interesting series, to say the very least. Just kind of go over how that series went.
Okay, so game one. Game one looked great. We were on point. Final score was 3-6 in favor of San Jose. We had the home ice advantage. It looked great. Everyone was excited. There was this sort of electric buzz, and it felt like, oh my God, this is going to happen. Game 2, first period, we were down 2-0, and it was really really distressing for us. But then the Sharks score 7 unanswered, and the final score in that game was 2-7. It was after that game that we all thought, like, oh my God, we're going to take down the Kings. This is going to be amazing. It's going to be like the greatest upset in history. Now, a lot of us were afraid to say the word sweep because, of course, it's only 2 games in. It's dumb to say you're going to sweep someone even if you've won 3 games in a row, because nothing is certain in hockey. But at 2 games, you already had people saying it. They were like, "Oh, the Kings haven't even showed up to this series." And I was like, "No, stop," because we're only 2 games in, and we may have woken the sleeping giant. Game 3. This is the interesting thing about Game 3, because the Sharks won in overtime, but it didn't look like they won. If you want to be realistic about this, and I got to hand this to the Kings, they won 5 games in that series. The Sharks got really lucky in Game 3, and they pulled off that Game 3 win in overtime. But they didn't really earn it. I realize that sounds super harsh, and of course, you score the goal, you earn the win. But in terms of the way that the control of that game looked, it was in LA's hands the whole time, and it was sheer luck in overtime that the Sharks managed to win.
And if I may interject here regarding the very powerful performance by San Jose in the first couple games at least, I remember listening to the radio voice of the great Dan Rusanowski, a favorite of mine, of course.
Your deep love.
And he mentioned a particular stat that I found rather astonishing, I suppose, because also keep in mind the season before San Jose met up with Los Angeles in the second round, and
Yes.
that series went what was it? Didn't that one go 7?
Yes, that one went 7. Hold on, I'm so focused on last year. I don't have the year before's numbers in front of me, but I believe that one went to 7, if I'm remembering correctly.
And I don't remember the exact numbers, but Dan mentioned San Jose scored more goals in 3 games in the first 3 games last year than they did the entire series the season before.
Yeah.
Much more goals. So San Jose definitely came out firing on all cylinders there. But but now we must get to we must proceed in the postseason talk and get to what happened.
Yeah. So this is the part where I wish it wasn't noon here, so that I could be drinking heavily to handle this, because it is painful. Game 4. Jesus. Niemi was a sieve. The final score was 3-6, and he looked as flustered and out of his depth as Quick had looked in Game 2. Because Game 2 of this series, by the way, backing up, is probably the only time I've ever seen Jonathan Quick look like a complete and utter mess. I mean, I think that he's a fantastic goalie. I think that he has a ton of skill. I have a lot of respect for him, even though he's a complete and utter douchebag because he's a king. But he looked completely flustered in Game 2, and that is how Niemi looked in Game 4. He just looked like he was a high school hockey player going up against NHLers and just not holding up. It was bad, and I think that Game 4 more than Game 5, where we were shut out, it was more his performance in Game 4 that led to the decision in Game 6 to have Stalock start rather than Niemi, which I love. I love Stalock. He's great. He's very skilled, and he's got, I think, a very bright future in front of him. But I think it was a mistake to start him in Game 6. Part of the reason for that is that it's it's really disheartening to get told that you're not getting the starting job. And of course, I can't pretend to know that I can read Auntie Niemi's mind. If I could, that would be really cool. But that's not something that any player wants to hear, that they're not getting the starting job. Even if they feel like maybe I didn't earn the job, getting that confirmed by your superiors is it's going to be disheartening. That's not something that's going to help your confidence levels. And as sloppy as Niemi had been in Game 4 and Game 5, he is, at this point, a little bit more stable of a starter than Stalock. While Stalock's performance in the NHL has been great, he just simply does not have the same kind of experience at dealing with these high-pressure games that Auntie Niemi does. And that's part of why I think in Game 7, like, Niemi just was gone. He just was not really there. Final score in that game was 5-1. It is, of course, worth mentioning that our offense also decided to stop showing up after Game 4, where we lost 3-6. We scored a grand total of 2 goals in the last 3 games. That's not going to cut it. It just isn't. The shots on net just were not up to snuff. The fact that the Kings' defense is fantastic is, of course, worth mentioning here. That there was not a ton that the Sharks, I think part of it is a matter of heart. And I realize that this sounds really ridiculous, that these intangibles, things like heart and grit and whatnot, that they're not statistically backed. But it really seemed like the Sharks just stopped thinking that they could win this. And you've all seen that gif of Joe Thornton at the end of Game 7. He just looked like a completely broken man. If at the end of Game 7 he had looked furious and angry and full of rage, I would tell you today that the Sharks have a very good chance of winning it all next season. I can't tell you that because he looked like a broken man, and I just don't think he's coming back.
Alrighty. And now we move on into the season review, move on into the unit breakdown. What we'll do here is we'll go over the 4 different parts of the team: the offense, defense, goaltending, and the coaching. You'll give your thoughts on how they did last season, and then you'll give a school grade, like a A+ or whatever, on how you felt they did. And we'll begin with the offense. Captain Joe Thornton there, he's got the experience and sometimes even had flashes of brilliance too. And Patrick Marleau, he's probably my favorite Shark there. And then you have your superstars such as Logan Couture and Joe Pavelski. Definitely, he was on fire there through the middle to the latter part of the season. But then there was an up-and-comer in Tomas Hertl. You may remember his astonishing 4-goal night against the New York Rangers and his incredible 4th goal there especially. I would highly recommend looking that one up on YouTube or whatever if you've not seen that one. But just go over the Sharks offense from the previous season.
Yeah, offensively, the Sharks had some really fantastic puck possession. They were doing basically. This is the year that we saw Joe Pavelski really come into his own in terms of like being a fantastically powerful player. My concern with Joe Pavelski is that we are seeing him at or near his peak. I'm hoping that he continues on this upward path. There's no way we're going to continue to see the exponential growth that we did last year. Last year was just an amazing year for Joe Pavelski. Logan Couture, of course, he turned 25 this year, so he's still fairly young, and he's continuing to impress. And hopefully he will hit that same peak point. If under ideal circumstances, he'll hit that same peak next year as Joe Pavelski is still peaking. where a little concerning is the slowing down of Patrick Marleau and Joe Thornton. They both had great years. I mean, Joe Thornton, of course, a ridiculous number of assists, 65. But of course, everyone says he's great at passing, and if only he would pass the back of the net. Those times where he does choose to shoot, he has it's just gorgeous. But he scored a grand total of 11 goals last year, and that's fine if he can keep up the assists. He's an incredibly talented player. His beautiful hands. I think he's really underappreciated. I hope that someday, whether or not the Sharks ever get the cup, that he'll end up in the Hockey Hall of Fame because he's incredibly talented. And I'm not just saying that as a homer. I think Joe Thornton is absolutely amazing. Patrick Marleau, of course, he had a 33 goal season last season, and that's great, especially at this point in his career. And I'm hoping that he'll continue to have 30-plus goal seasons for a while. But that's a bit of a hope rather than an expectation. We did, of course, see some of those younger guys come up. Tomas Hertl, of course, but I think that one player that gets missed in all of the talk of Tomas Hertl is Matt Nieto, who is a very talented young player, and he's got some room to grow, but I think that he's going to be one of the ones to watch next season. That he's really going to develop into an NHL caliber player, like a very high quality NHL caliber player. But if we didn't have Tomas Hertl, he would have been who everyone was talking about last season. But of course, Tomas Hertl, absolutely amazingly talented. Very unfortunate his injury though in December, and my concern is that he may never have the chance to develop into the player he could have been if he did not get that injury. So overall, I would say it was a good year offensively, but not a mind-blowing year. I mean, of course, if you only look at the highlight reel goals, it's mind-blowing, but it was a good year, but not ridiculous. I'd probably give them B+ in terms of offense.
Alrighty, and now we will move into the defense. From an outsider's standpoint, I guess it would the biggest name on the defense would probably be Marc-Edouard Vlasic, and then there's just a bunch of other defensemen with him, kind of just Marc-Edouard Vlasic and company there. But now that we have an insider in here, kind of just talk about the San Jose Sharks defense and how they did last season.
Yeah. So here's the thing that's interesting. It's interesting, of course. Marc-Edouard Vlasic really, I think people finally started to notice the skill that he has this season, and that was actually really satisfying to see other people starting to notice the awesomeness of Vlasic, who, by the way, while many of us call him Pickles, he apparently hates that. So MEB, as he apparently prefers to be called, he's just really had a great year. His plus minus, it was plus 31. It's just awesome. And yeah, he had a great year, but I think that a lot of people tend to. It's funny, if we weren't talking about last season, I think the first name that would have come up would have been Dan Boyle. But of course, Dan Boyle had that concussion that he suffered on October 15th, thanks to the Blues. So he had basically after that concussion, he did not have the same kind of speed and ability that he had been having for the past few years. I think it's really unfortunate that Dan Boyle was injured when he was, because if he was still playing at the level where he had been, say, the 2012 to 2013 season, or not 2012 to 2013, the 2013 lockout shortened season, I like to pretend that it was a whole season in my mind, in my heart. But alas, if he had been playing at that level this season, and Marc-Edouard Vlasic was playing at the level that he had been playing at, we would have had a ridiculous defense. I mean, sure, the rest of our defense, they're good, but not even good. They're okay. God. Part of the concern I have for this team is that without Marc-Edouard Vlasic and without Dan Boyle at the level that he should be playing at, the Sharks' defense is pretty terrible. And we saw that after Vlasic was injured in the playoff series. I don't even know why I managed to forget bringing that up when I was talking about the playoffs. But, of course, Marc-Edouard Vlasic's injury basically killed the Sharks' defense. And not having him around basically just it killed the team. It was bad. And basically on defense it's going to fall down to him and Brent Burns next season. I don't know how that's going to shake out, but of course we'll talk more about next season later. All in all, our defense this season, Marc-Edouard Vlasic pulls it up to a B-, but otherwise it would definitely be in the C range. But yeah, I'm pretty down on our defense.
Alrighty, and now we'll move into the goaltending. I guess it's safe to say that Antti Niemi was definitely the Sharks' number one goaltender for last season. But whenever Alex Stalock would get a start, I felt he did pretty good. I listened to a few games in which Stalock started, and it sounded at least like he held his own. But still, it was kind of Niemi's show to run there.
Yeah.
Just to kind of go over the goaltending.
Yeah. So we'll start with Stalock. Like you said, he was definitely the backup goaltender this year. The coaching staff claims that might not be the case next year. We'll see. But Stalock, very talented. He has a very interesting style. He kind of plays like a hybrid between like the very acrobatic sort of Finnish, crazy, stretchy, ridiculous saves, and the Jonathan Quick played really far out of the net and making some pretty daring stops sort of style. So it's this hybrid between the American and the Finnish style. That's a lot of fun to watch. I really enjoy watching Stalock play. Antti Niemi, of course, he makes some crazy saves. Some that just seem absolutely ridiculous. And when he's on, he is so on. Like if he is on point, he is a wall, and it's gorgeous and just I love it. But the problem is that he's not always on, and that more often than not he's having a fairly off evening, and that can be hard to watch. And I'm concerned that basically he's managed to survive on his good days and have people sort of ignore his bad days. I'm thinking that after this last season, especially the series against the Kings, that's not going to be the case anymore. That his bad days will be scrutinized more heavily than they were in the past. Goaltending wise, I don't know. It's really hard because it's schizophrenic. Some days it's an A+, some days it's an F. So I guess that averages out to a C. But that seems really harsh when I say that the goaltending gets a C. I don't know. It's a rough one to judge because it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Civ. It's terrible. I guess I'll go with a C. It breaks my heart.
Now I must mention, speaking of Sharks goaltending and crazy saves, just as a random side note, I guess, one of the favorite saves I've ever seen probably came courtesy of Evgeny Nabokov back when he was a San Jose Shark, and it was against the Dallas Stars. I guess it was a playoff series. This was back when Brad Richards was playing for Dallas, and it was a Brad Richards shot too. It was a kind of a cross-crease pass there. Nabokov had a really stretch, go side to side there, and he just absolutely robbed him.
Oh God, it's like he doesn't even look at the puck. Like
Yeah,
his glove just goes, and
yeah.
his head goes after. Like yeah, I get goosebumps thinking about that one.
Oh, yes. Definitely check that one out on YouTube if you have not seen that one, listeners. Okay, now to conclude the season in review, let us now discuss head coach Todd McClellan and the Sharks coaching staff.
Oh, T-Mac. I like T-Mac. I think that he's a very skilled coach. I think that he should have lost his job at the end of this season. And I realize that sounds pretty harsh, but if you look at the playoff series against the Kings, he tried. I'm going to back up a little bit here. Let me tell you a little bit about the Sharks. The Sharks they really like to play a thinking man's game, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, "What? You know, they're a little more physical than that. They don't really seem like a thinking man's game." But the interesting thing is if you listen to any of the interviews with the Sharks players, they are, for the most part, very intelligent guys who know their shit about the game. These are not people who are just like, just keep putting pucks on the net and maybe it goes in, dude. No, they're people who like to think about this game, and I think that that Doug Wilson, the GM of the Sharks, and Todd McClellan really value that in a player. They like someone who is thinking about the game, and you can see that in the captain, in Joe Thornton. The number one concern with the Sharks is they have a strong passing game, and sometimes that's the only game they play, especially in the power play, where they just pass and pass and pass and pass and pass, and they try and get around the defense just through outthinking them. But you can't really think your way into the goal necessarily. Sometimes you have to just go. And that sort of, I feel like that really sums up the problems with Tom McClellan's coaching, is that he is constantly trying to he thinks that he can out-coach other teams. That he thinks that from behind the bench he can think his way out of any problem that they run into on the ice. And the fact of the matter is that when you get in this position, it's really easy to get played. You saw Todd McClellan go up against Daryl Suter in the Kings Sharks series, and you could just see the smug look on Suter's face. Like he shifted his lines a tiny bit, and Todd McClellan had no idea what to do anymore. He kept throwing slightly different lines out there, not giving them enough time to gel, not giving them enough time to come together. But he thought, like maybe if we just throw something different at this team, maybe then we'll get through. And that's not necessarily how it works. It's not completely a game where you can just put pieces together and expect it to work instantly. This is a game where you have to, there needs to be some time for things to come together, and that just did not have the chance to happen. And that's specifically looking at the playoff series, but especially with the power play. I want to say, is Jay Woodcroft the power play coach? One of the assistant coaches, the power play guy, who I want to say is Jay Woodcroft, but I could be completely wrong about this because I'm terrible at remembering who does what sometimes. The power play was garbage. It was terrible, and that's something that coaching should intervene on. And I know Joe Thornton's out there kind of leading the charge, and his game is much more of a passing game, but at some point the coaching staff has to come in and be like, look, this isn't working. Something needs to change. Let's make a change. And that's what coaches are there for, and that just didn't happen. So coaching wise, I would definitely give us a D. A D. Like they're great, but they're not doing what they need to be doing, and that's problematic.
And that concludes the look back into the previous season. Now we'll sort of transition into the off season, but specifically we'll just talk more about acquisitions starting from the trade deadline up until now. Now, I don't remember if the Sharks made any moves, kind of additions or subtractions at the trade deadline, but
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Well,
No.
we can just subtract the trade deadline from there, and we'll fully move into the off season, and we'll talk about the Sharks' acquisitions in the free agency.
Oh God. Okay, so let's start by talking about subtractions before we get to additions. Of course, the Sharks chose not to re-sign Dan Boyle, and that is, he was a fan favorite, and when he was at his peak, was just an amazing defenseman. But they chose not to re-sign him, and so he's gone. They also did a buyout of Martin Havlat, and of course Havlat has injury issues. We call him Mr. Glass because he is very breakable. But when he's healthy, he's a fantastic player, just absolutely amazing. But he's not often healthy, and that's a problem. So, furthermore, they never played him once in the playoff series against the Kings, even though he was healthy. I have problems with this, but
And I do remember kind of as the regular season was coming to a close, I think it was the last game against Colorado, Marty Havlat's hat trick there.
Yeah, the Havlat trick. Yeah, when he's healthy, he's amazing. And I really don't understand, especially after that performance, why he didn't earn a spot in the playoffs. But that's a bit of a digression. So Havlat's gone. Dan Boyle's gone. Brad Stewart is gone. We got a second round and a sixth round pick for him. He went to Colorado, I believe. And that is way more than I think anyone was expecting to get for him. I think that people were hoping for a Togo's sandwich, I believe, was the phrase that I heard thrown around. If you're not familiar with Togo's, they're a sandwich chain that's based out of California. They're from San Jose originally. Anyway, we were hoping to get a sandwich for him, and we got 2 picks, so that's better than was expected. So, that gives us a ton of cap space to play around with. So you'd think maybe the Sharks will be really active in free agency. Maybe they'll sign someone big. Maybe we'll get some defensemen to fill in some of the holes that we have on our defense. No. We got John Scott. We got, out of all the things, of all, God, it hurts. Of all the things the Sharks need, John Scott is probably what the Sharks need the least. He is a big brute of a man. I hear he's a fantastic person on a personal level, and that's just super, but that's not what our hockey team needs. We don't need someone who's going to be on the wing and can't score at all. I believe he has like a career total of 2 NHL goals. Yeah, that's just not going to cut it. And oh God, maybe if he were a defenseman who couldn't score goals, but he's not. He's not really a defenseman. He has played defense in the past, but that's not really what he does in the NHL. Maybe at training camp we'll see him get moved to defense, but the fact that Doug Wilson hasn't been talking about that indicates to me that he's not. Because Doug Wilson would be like, oh yeah, we didn't get him just to be like a big scary enforcer to punch Dustin Brown in the face. We got him to play defense. We're going to teach him to play defense. It's going to be great. No, that's not what's happening. And so he's going to end up on someone's wing. He's going to be eating a roster spot that someone who fits the profile of the young up and coming hockey player that the Sharks claim that they want in their team coming up this season. He's taking up a spot that one of those young up and coming players could be taking, and that's just garbage. He is the absolute opposite of what we need, and it hurts deep in my soul that this is happening. We did get a couple other minor league signings as well. Just a couple guys. I believe we got Fedun. We got a couple other just minor leaguers, but there's nothing else to speak of. Our big signing, what we did with all that money and all that maneuverability, was get John Scott. Now I have a theory that we were probably trying to get Niskanen, but I don't think that ended up happening, obviously, because the Caps have him. But I think that Doug Wilson was trying to make that happen, and that's why we have that the additional $6 million of cap space that is not being used right now. Frustratingly, we've bought out Havlat, and we have to give him that $6 million. So that $6 million is lost either way. And we appear to be going into the season with $6 million of unused cap space. That, I mean, say what you will about Martin Havlat, but a guy who's injured a lot and who plays occasionally is a lot better than nobody, because that's what we're getting for our $6 million right now is nobody. So, very frustrating in terms of our participation in the free agent market. I'm hoping that Doug Wilson pulls something out in the next few weeks, or I guess we're only 1 week out from training camp now. We're really close to our training camp. I think it starts next Friday. And I'm really hoping that Doug Wilson pulls something out, maybe some crazy blockbuster trade, because he's of course known for doing ridiculous trades. Something that will make this team a little more cohesive. Give them something. Give them some defense, or God, I don't even know. This whole thing's depressing. I need a drink.
Alrighty. Now we'll get into the NHL entry draft and just kind of go over who the Sharks picked up in the draft.
Yeah, Nikolai Goldobin, who I probably am butchering his name because I'm not good at Russian pronunciation. He played for the Sarnia Sting, had a wonderful year. He may well be sort of like the sleeper pick. Like he's probably going to develop into a really fantastic player. I have not had a chance to watch any of his games with the Sting, but I hear a lot of great things about him, and I'm hoping that this is one of those young up and coming players that I think the Sharks are really looking for. The problem is that we drafted all of one defenseman. We have very few defensemen in our system coming up that are that look like they're going to be able to make it to the big show, and that's a problem given the holes that we have in the defense right now. I'm hoping that that perhaps through trades or through our draft next year that we're going to be picking up defensemen. But the fact that we're not drafting any defensemen aside from in the fourth round we got Alexis Vanier, stupid Quebecois. I'm probably like alienating all of your French speakers now, but if they speak French, they're not listening to this anyway. But yeah, the fact that we're not drafting for defense at all means that we're not really thinking about our defensive team's future, and that's a problem given the state of our defense right now.
Alrighty, and this is normally the part where I ask about what to expect for the rest of the off season, but that time is quickly dwindling, so we'll just skip that question and head right into the next season for the regular. Or no. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you a question. I want the first word to be yes or no, and then you can explain your reasoning. But the question here that I'm going to put you on the spot is: will the San Jose Sharks make the playoffs again?
The answer is yes with a big but. So it's yes but because if the Sharks succeed in what they appear to be trying to do in driving out Joe Thornton, if the Sharks somehow manage to get Joe Thornton to waive his no trade clause, they don't make the playoffs. It's just not. It's not going to happen. It would not happen if they got rid of Joe Thornton. I think that the Sharks, as they stand right now, here's the biggest problem. The difference between the Sharks of this coming season and the Sharks of last season is one of subtraction. We have less than we did last season. We have no Dan Boyle. We have no Martin Havlat. And we'll again have no Rafi Torres to start off the season. But that was the same as last year. We've added John Scott, who is not much of an addition at all. So the thing that I keep coming back to is if this team couldn't do it last year, how can this team minus a couple of important pieces how can a team minus what we had last year accomplish it? And I see us going to the playoffs. I'm not so doom and gloom that I see us out of the playoffs unless we do something remarkably stupid like get rid of Joe Thornton. I still see us going to the playoffs, but I don't see us doing anything good. I see us going out in the first round, probably, and like this would be like the real death knell of the modern Sharks is that we would go into the playoffs, we'd get stomped in the first round in a completely humiliating fashion. We'd get swept out, or we'd get reverse swept again. Or even if we managed to win a game or two, it would just be a slaughter, and then the Sharks are done. They'd be missing the playoffs for the next couple seasons because they'd just be emotionally gone. But the possibility of there being some trades, mid-season that make the real difference for the Sharks and make them able to succeed in the playoffs is a definite possibility still. But as they are today, I don't see them succeeding in the playoffs.
And you mentioned the trade deadline there, and I know one question that Dave normally asks, but I have not for some reason. For the trade deadline next season, do you see the Sharks being buyers or sellers?
I see Doug Wilson once again doing the same ridiculous bullshit he did this last year and doing nothing. He may well do nothing, and that's a problem. I'm hoping that he is the Doug Wilson of years past who makes like some really incredible blockbuster trade, and I'm hoping that happens. I just don't, realistically, logically, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that we're seeing the end of the Sharks as a powerhouse, and it's very sad.
All right, and now for the just the playing the games in the season and looking at the Pacific standings. Do you see San Jose keeping up with the triumvirate, keeping the name of the triumvirate, the three-headed California monster? Do you see them keeping that name, or do you see them kind of faltering off a little and letting a Phoenix or a Vancouver or whoever kind of take that third spot?
I don't think Phoenix or Vancouver are really in a position to take up that number 3 spot, but I do see the Sharks, rather than fighting for first like they were last season, I see them in a very comfortable third. So they'll still be in the top 3. They just won't be, in contention for the top. So.
And Arizona, I should have said, it's something we're all still getting used to, I assume.
Yeah.
But now we head into the. But now we head into the miscellaneous questions to close out this overview, and we'll begin with who you would see would be the top goal and points getter for the Sharks in the upcoming season.
Let's see. In terms of goals, I think that we're this is my hope. I hope that we're going to see Logan Couture take that top spot. I'm thinking that it's going to go Logan Couture, Joe Pavelski, Patrick Marleau on the top for goals. For points, however, I'm seeing. I think we're going to see Joe Pavelski and Joe Thornton still in the top, just because of the ridiculous quantity of assists that Joe Thornton puts out there. And especially if we have Pavelski playing on Thornton's wing, as is projected to be happening again, even though it's really, really, really stupid, and one of the reasons why I'm mad at Todd McClellan. Backing up, for those who are not more familiar with the Sharks, Joe Pavelski is he can alternate between being a center and a winger. He is very talented as a third line center. And you may be thinking to yourself, Joe Pavelski is a third liner? That's awful. He's so skilled. And it's true, he is incredibly skilled. But putting him on Joe Thornton's wing is a bit of a waste because, as we've seen with Cheech, you can put fucking anything on Joe Thornton's wing, and they score like crazy. But Joe Pavelski is a fantastic playmaker of his own, and he can bolster up a third line that would have been fairly weak, and make that into a more offensively strong line than would have been otherwise. So and the numbers support this too, that the Sharks do better and score more when Joe Pavelski is centering a third line than when he is on Joe Thornton's wing. So I have no bloody clue why Todd McLellan keeps putting Joe Pavelski on Thornton's wing. I'm hoping that maybe he comes to his senses. I'm hoping that maybe the Sharks hire some advanced stats guys like the Leafs have done, so that they can look at these numbers and be like, oh, hey, maybe Pavelski should be centering the third line like he was doing and being so successful in 2013. But I digress. Yeah, I definitely see Joe Pavelski and Joe Thornton on top for points, and I want to say Logan Couture is going to be on top for goals.
Alrighty. And who do you see as being the top overall player, in terms of stats or intangibles and just what they would mean, how important they would be to the program in any spot on the roster? Who do you see being the top overall player in those terms?
Well, clearly as your captain, I'm going to be the top player. For those who are not aware, I was recently elected the San Jose Sharks captain by the hockey comedy site Battle of California. So, yes, I am now the captain of the San Jose Sharks. No, it's definitely going to be John Scott, clearly, in terms of intangibles. No. Yes, he brings that grit, that gritty grit that we were missing. No, I think that we're going to continue to see Vlasic really shine in terms of the defense, but we're going to sort of see him buckling a little bit under the weight of the Sharks depending so strongly on him, because it's basically going to be Vlasic and Burns as our top D pair, and that's going to be rough for them. The fact that the rest of the defensive team is not really strong enough to carry the load that needs to be carried. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Vlasic, and while he's still going to be an incredibly strong defenseman, I think that we're going to start to see he's going to be straining under that weight. He's not going to get to shine like he would if our defensive core was stronger. In terms of numbers, in terms of like all around awesomeness, I think this is the year that Pavelski really gets bumped up to the fore. Between the amount of assists I'm hoping that he gets and the number of goals, I see him really kind of becoming the star. And he's actually my money for the actual captaincy because, as you, the listeners may or may not know, the Sharks have no captains and no alternates right now. My money's on Joe Pavelski getting the C. A lot of people say Logan Couture, but I think he's just still too young. And he's got. I don't necessarily see him getting the C. But of course, the captaincy is just this weird thing that, as outsiders, we can't really know for sure who's going to end up with that. But I don't know. My gut's telling me Pavelski.
Alrighty. And the final question here for the Sharks overview. Let us say, I know I'm speaking hypothetically, but either way, let us say that everything that can go wrong does go wrong. And the San Jose media, your Dan Rusanowski's, your Brody Brazils, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, that's his name. That's actually his name.
Okay, yeah.
It sounds like a made-up name, but it's really his name.
Yes. Let us say that the San Jose media is out. They smell blood. They smell blood in the water, and they're looking for someone to be their public enemy number one. Who will they find to fill that role?
I know that Doug Wilson is shoving Joe Thornton into that position, but I feel like the media is not biting. They're not biting that bait. They're giving the quotes that Doug Wilson gives, basically verbatim, but they don't seem to be supporting it with the rest of what they write. Nobody's really buying that Joe Thornton is the problem with the Sharks. This is the thing, is that if everything completely goes to shit, they might start biting at that. And I think that if that happens, if the media really turns on Joe Thornton, that's when we lose him. The management is going to push Marleau and Thornton as the scapegoats, and whether the media buys into that or not depends on just how badly things have gone to shit. That's actually the number one folks that I see taking the fall are Marleau and Thornton. There is the possibility that Antti Niemi could take the brunt of the blame, but it would take some really a long streak of his off days, because his off days, like I was saying earlier, are pretty bad. But it would take a streak of those for the media to really notice and pick on, because I don't think it's as likely that it's going to be Niemi. It's much more likely going to be Thornton or Marleau, but he's like the possible number 3 on that list.
Alrighty, and look at that, Sadie. The pain of discussing the Sharks' postseason and the off season. It is over for you now.
The pain never ends.
It is over for you speaking about it at the moment, at least. You could
now you
probably
go drink and forget about it.
Yes. Okay, folks. You're in for a real treat now, as we have yet another week, a back-to-back week of the interviewer becoming the interviewee, as we now move on to discussion of the St. Louis Blues. And for this, I will pass the interviewer torch over to my partner in crime, Dave.
Hey, so you're ready for this, Blake?
I'm never ready.
Got all your notes done? Got all the points set up?
You and I, Dave, are never ready, but
we
give it the old college try. Let's do this thing.
So the first thing on the list, tell us about how your season went and how the postseason went for you guys. So I know it was very entertaining with everything that kind of went down.
And I do kind of have to go back to when Sadie and I were discussing the Sharks season, because that basically was the Blues season. We had a really, really great start to the season. I believe our 4-0 start broke a franchise record there. We kind of faltered a bit there, lost our first game against San Jose, that game where LaPierre gave that very horrifying injury there to Dan Boyle there. But, we have a great start to the season. We do really well against the Central Division. We win our series opener against Chicago, very exciting one there. And then after we lose in a shootout to Winnipeg, we go from that month, which I think was October, and we go all the way to March, defeating every single Central Division team along our path in that very long span. We have a good start to the season. We do very good against the Central Division there, and pardon me, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. I kind of want to save this for the offense kind of review, but Alexander Steen, he gets off to a very hot start, scoring all the goals, scoring goals like crazy. He was up there with Ovechkin and Stamkos. He was up there in the goal race there early in the season, and I think we really felt that he could have gave them a run for their money there all the way towards the end. But alas, his scoring dried up. But we'll get more to him in a bit. once again, we make a run for the top of the NHL. We get to the top of the Central. Once we get to the top of the Central, we hold it for a very long time, up until the disastrous end to the regular season. At the trade deadline, we pick up Ryan Miller, Steve Otto, but we'll get to them in a minute. We get to the top of the NHL. We finally beat out Anaheim for that spot, but then we go through that 7-game losing streak, I think it was, towards the end of the season, where everyone is dropping like flies. Backus is out with an injury. Oshie is out. Berglund is out. I think Steen was out. A defenseman or two was out. Everyone was dropping like flies. I think in the regular season finale against Detroit, we were starting people like Yashkin and Ty Ratty and Cracknell and some of the people you probably never heard of. But basically, that last part of the season, we lose all of our games. 7-game losing streak, I think it was. We lose grip of the President's Trophy. Boston ends up getting that one. And then, sadly, we lose grip of the Central Division title to the Colorado Avalanche. And that rewards us with a playoff series against the Chicago Blackhawks. And I guess you could say the vast majority of the fan base there, they were not too confident heading into that series because we still had a bunch of people out. We weren't doing that well at all.
Going in cold in the off-season's never a good thing.
No. And then we get Chicago in the postseason there, the defending Stanley Cup champion. And actually, we do win our first 2 games. Game 1 was a triple overtime thriller. That amazing goal from Backus to Ott to Steen. That amazing passing play there. Amazing setup there to get Steen the triple overtime winner there. And Game 2 is probably the one where we thought, oh my God, we could probably do this thing. It was very back and forth, and it ends in regulation with Vladimir Tarasenko. He scores the game winner with, I think it was maybe 4 seconds to go in regulation, I believe, that ties it, that sends it into overtime, and Barrett Jackman with a very it didn't even look like it went in at all. It was just it looked kind of like just a weak shot. It kind of looked like he wasn't really trying to score, but it was going towards the net, but didn't really feel like he was trying for a goal there. But somehow it squirted past Corey Crawford's 5-hole, and all of a sudden, we're up 2-0 in the series, and a whole new wave of optimism shows up. But alas, we go to the Madhouse in Madison. Chicago takes the next 2 games there. We come back to Scottrade, and we're like, okay, we got to win this one, of course. We were all under the impression that if we don't win this one, it's over. And of course, we don't win that one. And of course, we go to Game 6 and just completely shit the bed. It was a 5-1 loss in Game 6, and that ends our season. And I guess I must also mention, for those of you unaware, up until the Game 6 in that series, there were some eerie similarities with that series and the series the season before against the Los Angeles Kings. Game 1, both Game 1s had a game winner by Alexander Steen. The only difference was Steen scored in the first overtime the season before. Game 2 had a game winner by Barrett Jackman. The only difference was Jackman scored in regulation in the season before. Game 3 was a 2-0 loss. And I do remember the Game 3 the season before, and the way we played that one, too. We were just taking shots after shots after shots on Quick and Crawford, and, they just weren't going our way. So Game 3 felt very similar. Game 4 had the same result. Game 5, and I think this one was the spookiest one, Alex Petrangelo, no, Jaden Schwartz scored a go-ahead tying goal, a tying goal with an assist by Petrangelo, as it was the season before. That was probably the spookiest one. But we do lose the Game 6 5-1, as we did not do last year. So I'm kind of glad it ended like that, because if it had ended with I think it was a 1-0 loss the season before, we probably would have never heard the end of it. But and one other thing I must also talk about, kind of on a broader scope, talking about the popularity and the fan base. I really feel like this previous season, the people of St. Louis, the fan base just got a whole lot bigger in the St. Louis area. I've always felt like St. Louis was a baseball town, with how good the Cardinals are historically. But this season, I also feel like with a combination of the Rams not doing good at all, and the Blues just kind of mainstay, kind of regular season powerhouse team, kind of feel like there's a kind of a newfound popularity for the Blues there, and really feel like it took hold last season. And a real good example of this is their Twitter account. The season before, all they would ever tweet was goal updates, and that was just about it. But this year they go and tweet like, "Oh, hey, we're taking a selfie for our team photo." And when LeBron James was a free agent, they tweet out a kind of a Blues jersey with James and 6 on it, and "Hey LeBron, we hear you're looking for a team." So the Blues Twitter, they kind of get that zany kind of edge there that you would see from, I guess, like
the King,
from Columbus or Dallas or some of the other more popular Twitters, and
sassiness to it, yeah.
They grow a personality, and I feel like that reflected on the team there too. And we're coming up with all these mottos, the long live the note, we all bleed blue in the postseason, and this off season we come up with our city, our team. Gives it the kind of the personal feel there. And yeah, I really feel like the team is doing good, and the popularity is just growing.
Mm-hmm. That's good. You always want to see hockey grow in the southern area. So, okay, I guess that unless you have anything else you wanted to cover on the season and postseason, I guess we'll head into the next topic.
Oh no, we can advance to the. Oh, I've been talking so much.
So tell us about how your forwards did this season and kind of give them a grade on what their performance was.
Okay, well, the top player from most of the season probably was Alex Steen, or Alexander Steen, pardon me. You shouldn't call him Alex. He early on in the season he scores like crazy, and as I mentioned, he's up there with Ovechkin and Stamkos. He's up there with some of the top names in the Rocket Richard running.
Yeah, I had him on my fantasy team, and he did me wonders.
Oh yeah, and but he was up there with aligned with Backus and Oshie, and they formed what I like to call the boss line. I have no idea why anyone else would call it that. I thought that was pretty good. but Steen was kind of the playmaker of that line. Backus and Oshie would be the ones that would kind of set him up to get the goals, and that line really gelled really well. The second line, it was a very young line. The second line was Schwartz, Tarasenko, Sobotka. They were a very young line, and it was kind of weird. I felt like there was more of a chemistry with Schwartz and Tarasenko, and Sobotka was just kind of riding their coattails.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me, I'm having to take drinks. My voice is getting all old. So that line kind of felt weird to me. They were still putting up some good numbers, but I didn't feel a full chemistry, because, again, I felt like Sobotka was kind of along for the ride there, and that line just felt really weird to me. Our third line, before the trade deadline, we had Derek Roy, Brendan Morrow, and I can't remember the other guy. But Derek Roy, basically Roy's season just gradually went downhill as the season progressed. He had a really good start to the season, then he kind of tapered off in the middle, and then he was pretty much non-existent towards the end of the season. And Morrow, he kind of had kind of spurts of like 2 or 3 weeks at a time where he played decently, and then the rest of the time he didn't do much. I believe he got in double digits in goals that previous season. After the trade deadline, we get Steve Ott, and technically we had a third line of former Dallas Stars, and I kind of thought that was pretty fun. And with Ken Hitchcock as the coach, we were basically becoming the Dallas Stars there, I guess. And the third line was pretty fun there. The fourth line had Ryan Reeves and LaPierre, and I can't remember the other guy. Of course, Reeves and LaPierre, they're kind of they were the grit line, as you would expect from most fourth lines in the NHL. They were kind of the grit line, the beat people up line. I kind of feel like LaPierre, though, he took it a little too far sometimes, such as the injury he gave to Dan Boyle there against San Jose. But Reeves, though, I kind of felt, even though he was in the penalty box a lot, he still managed to not do anything too brash with his fighting. He fought when he felt like he needed to, and
spark the team basically.
Oh yeah, and that's what I liked about him. Offensively, I think I would give the Blues offense I may be generous here, but I'll give them a B+.
Mm-hmm.
They had a really great start to the season. I will be a little more lenient because there was a lot of injuries to the offense in the middle to the later part of the season with Backus and Steen and Oshie, and a lot of the offense there, they were out. Oh, you know what? Actually, going back to I can't believe I forgot about this guy, Patrick Berglund. He was the guy on the third line there.
Oh, okay.
And the thing about Berglund, he has the potential. He has the potential to be a really good player, and he showed it in Sochi too. He and Erik Karlsson for Team Sweden. They were lighting up the score sheet there, and Berglund showed a lot of promise, and we had really hoped that. We had really expected, actually, hoped to a lesser extent that he would come back to St. Louis and and bring that skill with him, but alas, he did not. Basically, there's a GIF of him. It was a home game against the Islanders. There's a GIF of him taking a slap shot, but his feet fall behind him, and he just falls on his face. That was his season in GIF form. But yes, I would give the Blues offense a B+. They did good, but they kind of dried up a little. But they also had a bunch of injuries, so I guess there really wasn't much they could do about that.
Yeah, lost the chemistry from the injuries and kind of going down at the wrong times.
Mm-hmm.
Juggling the lines. It's hard to keep it going all season long when that type of stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so unless you have anything else you want to cover, you gave them a B+. So I guess we'll head into the defensemen now. And so tell us about your defensemen and kind of give them a grade also. And tell us about how they did this season.
And one thing about Ken Hitchcock is he is just a master at the game of defense. I think you could tell from watching his that series against Buffalo in the Stanley Cup final. Pardon me, when he was coaching at Dallas, and just the Stars' defense in general. That the whole entire postseason that season, just really through the season. You could tell the Stars' defense was a force to be reckoned with, and Hitchcock's definitely a master of the defense there. I think.
Something he's always been really good at. So.
Mm-hmm. And fun fact too, he's never played hockey once in his life.
Really?
And then he goes and coaches and he masters defense. How about that?
Oh, that's amazing, actually.
Mm-hmm. But anyway. And I think that shows with the Blues defense. We have two alternate captains on the defense. One of them is Alex Pietrangelo. He's, I guess you could probably say he's our number one defenseman there. I think he plays more of a hybrid style, I guess. He'll play a little offensively, but I guess he tends to play more behind the blue line, but he's the setup guy, the main setup guy on the defensive unit. He's the one that gets all the assists from the defense. His partner through most of the season was Jay Bouwmeester. He was the one we picked up from Calgary, the trade deadline before, and I actually quite like J-Bo. I think he's kind of old, isn't he, in his mid-30s maybe?
I'll look that up as you talk.
But he's still got...
30 years old.
Huh?
30 years old.
Oh, okay. Well, he's still got a little bit more playing time to go. But, he does really well. And the chemistry there with Pietrangelo is outstanding. Bouwmeester tends to play a lot more defensively, but sometimes when he needs to, he'll play offensively. He'll take a shot on occasion if he needs to. He doesn't pinch a lot. He's very defensive there. The second line is where the other alternate captain would be, and that would be Barrett Jackman. There is not an athlete in St. Louis. There's not another Cardinal or another Ram that has been in St. Louis longer than Barrett Jackman has. So you get the continuity there, you get the experience there, and he's just he's one of the great leaders there. However, I will say in the untimely moment, God forbid that if Backes ever leaves for some reason, I would still probably have to give Pietrangelo the C. Just because Jackman's old.
It's not that old.
Um, I
Only
want to say
33.
he's 30. Oh, 33?
Yeah.
Well,
You're very
um,
over like aging people.
yeah. Eh,
I mean, he's been on our
I,
team since 2001, so.
yeah. And, once again, he's the longest tenured athlete in St. Louis. The experience is there, the continuity is there, and he still tends to show flashes of brilliance. He's also very defensive minded,
Mm-hmm.
but I do believe he scored a goal against Los Angeles in the previous season, and he also scored that game winner in Game 2. But most of the time, he'll play very defensively. His defensive partner was Roman Polak, who we traded away in the draft, but we'll get to that aspect later. Roman Polak was also very defensively. He rarely played offensively. He was more the enforcer type defenseman. We always had I guess like a inside joke, I guess you could say. We all give all the teams a warning that you should never open the Roman Polak door. Sadie might know, but San Jose once opened the Roman Polak door, and it didn't go too well for them.
What happened?
I actually don't remember. I'll have to look that one up. But yeah, San Jose opened the Roman Polak door, and it didn't work out well at all. But he was more the enforcer there. He was the guy that would just kind of be there to beat people up and rough people around. But on that pairing, you'd probably leave it to Jackman to do more of the
Defending.
more of the defending stuff. Polak was there most of the time, I guess, just to cover that side of the ice, really, just to be a person there, because Jackman can't be everywhere. The third defensive pairing, was weird because we had Kevin Shattenkirk. He was an Olympian. He played for.
Third pairing?
Huh?
He was down on your third pairing?
No, he
Shattenkirk?
he was the previous season, I believe.
Okay.
And he was an Olympian. He played for Team USA. He's also kind of a hybrid guy. He and Pietrangelo probably are the more hybrid players there on the defensive side. But Shattenkirk, he'd take some shots, he'd score some goals, and get on the score sheet there mainly.
Okay.
But his partner was Jordan Leopold, and I've always felt that Leopold was the team pylon there. And when you have the team pylon on one side, and you have a hybrid defenseman who's also an Olympian on the other side, I wouldn't think that wouldn't work out too well.
Mm-hmm.
So the third pairing was kind of wonky. If it were up to me, I probably would have put Shattenkirk up there with Pietrangelo, because they're both hybrid, kind of. And I would have put Bouwmeester down with Jackman, and then put Polak and Leopold. Although the third pairing there, that would just basically be people who wouldn't be really defensive a lot. You'd have the pylon and the enforcer. That probably wouldn't work out so well. So the defense, it was good, but it was also kind of complicated in that sense. I would give the Blues defense, I would give them an A-. They did their job, but when they had Ryan Miller on the team, and we'll get more into him in a moment, they tended to play in front of very much in front of the net a lot, and that's normally what you shouldn't do, I gather. So I would give them a minus for their effort.
Okay. Seems like a solid grading for the type of defense that you guys had. I know you guys kind of had a really good all-around team, so. But yeah, heading into the goalies next. So kind of tell us about your goalies. I know you kind of had 4 of them this season, and then
Yes,
give them a grade.
We've had a lot of goalies this season, and I'm not sure if I wanted to talk about Miller in this section or in the acquisitions, the trade deadline section, but he was kind of a important part of the team there, so we'll get to him in this section. But we'll begin with Yaroslav Halak, who started the season kind of. I kind of felt like with him and Elliott, it was more kind of a 1A, 1B kind of thing.
That's what it kind of seems to started out, but it feels like you guys kind of led towards Halak by the end of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and because, Halak, he would get injured from time to time, but whenever he wasn't injured, whenever he was healthy, he'd play really well.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually in the previous season that he tied the franchise record, I believe, with the great Glenn Hall for shutouts. He tied that record against Florida, I believe. And, he played very well. But Brian Elliott, on the other hand, I'll go back even further to the previous season when talking about Brian Elliott. There, it was really, the previous season, it was Elliott and Allen there because Halak was out with an injury. So Elliott, with the more experience, he'd get more starts. He had a very rough start to the season, the previous season, or the season prior to that one. But he really, really turned it up in April in the postseason against LA. So I think we kind of felt that we had hoped at the very least, we had expected him to carry that over into the next season, which he kind of did. I do mention again that game against Winnipeg, which was a shootout loss. Elliott was the starting goalie for that one. And it was actually a back and forth game, but Elliott was on the losing side of that contest. Okay, and now the trade deadline, we ship Halak away to Buffalo, and then we bring in Ryan Miller, and Doug Armstrong brings him in under the guise of that he'd be the focal point, the key part of a very deep playoff run, and there was really kind of a Blues fan base civil war going on here. You have one side that says, "Oh, Miller's terrible. Oh, why'd you trade him?" You have the other side that says, let's not be too hard on him now. He hadn't been there a whole lot. And I'm kind of on that, and I was on that side. You can call me an apologist or whatever suits you, but he was with Buffalo for 10, 12 years or so.
Something like that, yeah, a while.
And the system in Buffalo wasn't exactly it, but it was basically just kind of built around him, based off of him, and they just build it from there. But he comes into St. Louis, and all of a sudden he has to quickly learn a brand new system with a whole bunch of people. I kind of feel like now, a lot of people would automatically think that when he goes from a not so great team from Buffalo to a fairly great team in St. Louis, you'd think he'd just be lights out awesome. Well, it just doesn't work out that way because, again, he was very, very familiar with the Buffalo system, and all of a sudden he had to get used to a brand new system just thrown at his face.
Not only that, it's kind of hard for him to. He's used to getting 50 shots a night.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
wasn't getting that.
Yeah, and that was the other thing I was going to talk about. Because I felt it was kind of like in Buffalo, you know, he was their number one guy on the whole team. He was their number one guy. He was expected to kind of lead the charge to a Sabres win. But in St. Louis, you know, he's put in front of a better team. He won't see as many chances, and that's kind of a thing he had to quickly get used to there. And one of the more infuriating things I think people brought up was they would compare Halak's goals against average from his time in St. Louis to Miller's, as if that was to prove a point that, oh, look at this, Miller's, he's terrible here. Well, but, you know, when you compare that to Halak, who's been with the team for, what, 3-4 seasons?
Something like that, yeah.
To Miller, who's only been there for 3-4 weeks, you know, that doesn't prove jack. It's such a small sample size, you know. And heading into the off season, I had actually kind of hoped that we would have re-signed Miller because A, you know, give him more time. Give him more time to get used to the system, and B, you know, he could be a wonderful mentor to to Jake Allen, while also getting some playing time that he'd like. But alas, that's not how it happened. But with the bad things come the good things, which we'll get to in a moment. And then you have Jake Allen. He didn't play. I don't think he played at all this season. He maybe played in relief of Elliott in one game or so, but he's still one worth mentioning because he's waiting in the wings. You know, we all remember his pretty good performance the season before, but he's waiting in the wings, and now with Brian Miller gone and it just being Elliott and Allen, you know, he'll finally have yet another chance
to claim that spot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Goaltending wise, I would give the Blues goaltending I would give them just a solid B.
Okay. Kind of average.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the last thing on the list, coaching. Ken Hitchcock is your coach. How do you think he did this season? Kind of give him a grade and tell us about what his kind of system was.
Okay, let's just go over the one big like and the one big dislike I have with Ken Hitchcock. I already mentioned the like. You know, he is a defensive master, and I definitely feel that in the NHL, if you want to win big, you got to have a great defense.
Mm-hmm.
You can have all the great goal scorers if you want. You know, look at Stamkos and the Lightning's defense,
mm-hmm.
and then look at Ovechkin and the Capitals defense, and you know, that's kind of two examples I tend to throw out for this point. But you know, you can have all the high flying goal scorers you want, but if you don't have a great defense to back them up, you know, you can't get very far. You'll get somewhere, but not very far. And I feel that Hitchcock knows that. I feel he knew that from the very start, and he decided he wants to learn the defensive, master the art of NHL defense, and that he did. So he comes to St. Louis, he implements the defensive system, and all of a sudden we have one of, if not the best defenses in the league. But the dislike. and this is probably a fairly big dislike. One thing he tends to do with the offense is shuffle lines. He shuffles lines all the time. He changes up lines when people are not gelling. He changes up lines when people are gelling. He changes up the first, the second, the third, the fourth line. He shuffles lines. One big example of this from last year, we had in the season before, we had the CPR line: Chris Porter, Ryan Reeves, Adam Cracknell, and they were probably our go-to line in that playoff series. But I think it was after Game 4, maybe. Hitchcock decides, I'm going to put Cracknell somewhere else and put this guy in, and then all of a sudden our whole game, it just collapses. That's one of the things I think Hitchcock is going to have to. He's going to have to change that in himself. To, if a line's working, just keep it that way. If a line's working, if it's putting up numbers, just keep it that way. I feel like he'd.
Makes change for the sake of change.
Yeah. Although I do feel like he did a great job keeping the Steen, Backus, Oshie line the way it was when they were putting up numbers, but he's got to have to stop doing the line shuffle. We bring in Kirk Moeller, formerly the head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes. I would have actually preferred to have brought in Adam Oates because A, he's a former Blue, and he'd be familiar with the team and the setting, and B,
he's a power play specialist.
He is a power play specialist. I mean, you could say, well, he does have Ovechkin, but he's still pretty darn good with that power play. I would have preferred to have brought in Oates, but Moeller, he's very familiar with Hitchcock's system. He was a former assistant under Hitchcock. I believe he was when Dallas won in '99. Don't quote me on that. I think he was. So he's very familiar with that system. So either way, I kind of feel it was a good pickup there. And we also bring in, we get rid of Corey Hirsch, who's our goaltending coach, and we replace him with the former coach at Buffalo, I think, Jim Corsi. Yes, we bring in Corsi. So we kind of, I guess you could say we went the Toronto route or something. I believe he was from Buffalo, which also kind of led me to believe, hey, maybe we might keep Miller, but alas, we didn't. But, again, look at what he did with Miller in Buffalo. I think he was there as long as Miller has been there. He was basically the guy behind the scenes kind of grooming Miller into what he has become. Maybe he can do that same thing with Jake Allen. Maybe he can keep Brian Elliott kind of on the gradual path to success. I'm excited about picking up Corsi as goaltending coach there. But from last season, overall, I would give Blues coaching staff a I'd have to give them a B, just a solid B. Hitchcock kept the defensive system going very strong, but again, he did the lineup shuffle, but this time, he had a ton of injuries to contend with, so, he couldn't help but to change the lineups when you have your Dmitry Ashkins or your Ty Raddies or your Adam Cracknells coming in and you're trying to figure out where to put them. He couldn't help but to do that. So I give them a solid B.
Okay. So that concludes our past season talk. So heading into the off season, why don't you talk about the draft and what you guys did during that day?
Well, and to be quite honest, one of the things I don't follow with the NHL is the NHL draft. Mostly, I like to keep tabs of who teams will trade for what draft picks. I was there the previous draft when Corey Schneider was traded, and I was blown away with that. Just like everyone, I was there when James Neal was. I wasn't physically there, but I was there when James Neal was traded to Nashville. I'm kind of more interested in that. I can't say I was very interested in who people draft. I kind of look back more into that, but except the 2007 draft, that one never happened.
Mm-hmm.
But it did, and if you don't know, the St. Louis Blues had the top overall pick in a draft that had who'd it have? Jonathan Toews, Giroux, I think. Dave.
Drew was that the 2006 draft?
It could have been 06, actually. But anyway.
2006 was I know that's when Giroux was drafted.
Anyway, the Blues had the top overall draft. Jonathan Toews was a big name in that draft, and there was a whole bunch of other kind of now superstars in the NHL. But we used that draft. But we used that draft on Erik Johnson. But anyway, I'm getting off topic here. This year's draft, we did make a trade for a player and a pick. We traded with Toronto. We traded Roman Polak to the Maple Leafs, and in exchange we got a draft pick, which I think was the 94th overall pick, and Carl Gunnarsson. Now this one I actually really like. I feel like we took great advantage of Dave Nonis, who, is in Toronto.
That's all you really need to explain.
Yeah. And, he runs the thing pretty much, so, you could probably trade him a sandwich for Phil Kessel or something. I don't know. But, I kind of feel like we definitely won that trade. And I'll use the stat route, fancy stats or whatever. Look at Carl Gunnarsson's stats and look at Roman Polak's stats. From there, you can conclude that Carl Gunnarsson is better than Roman Polak. And I also think with this acquisition, you can really shuffle the lineups, shuffle the D pairings up, and make it really great because Gunnarsson can pair with Shattenkirk, and that would be a really great D pairing right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt that trade was pretty good. In the draft, the Blues drafted, let me look it up here. I want to say 7 or 8 players. I'm actually more excited to see the second overall, or our second draft pick, than I am to see our first, because the resume on the second draft pick is much more colorful, I guess, much more interesting. But the first overall draft pick, Robbie Fabry, we picked him up from Guelph. He was selected to play in the 2014 CHL NHL Top Prospects game. So he was one of the draft picks to look out for there, and he was also the recipient of the Wayne Gretzky 99 award, which is the MVP of the OHL playoffs. He got that in the last playoffs there. But the second draft pick, where'd he go? Ivan Barbashev from Moncton. That's the one I'm looking more forward to, because unlike Fabry, Barbashev has more of a international playing career kind of resume there. He won gold at the 2012 World U17 Hockey Challenge. They placed 5th at the Ivan Hlinka Memorial Tournament in 2012. They placed 4th at the 2013 IIHF World U18 Championship, and he won the bronze at the 2014 World Junior Ice Hockey Championship. But he also did get some awards playing for Moncton and playing in the QMJHL. But yeah, because of the more international deal, and he's Russian too, and you know the hockey powerhouse that Russia likes to have there.
Yeah.
So you know he's definitely he was definitely elite at his level to play U17, U18, whatever for Team Russia. So I'm more excited to see Barbashev wear the blue note.
Okay. So, looking at where was I? So you covered Carl Gunnarsson and Roman Polak. So you actually signed Paul Stastny this year. So
Yes.
how do you feel about him?
Well, first we'll just kind of I'll take this and we'll just kind of broaden it out a little to just the overall additions and subtractions from the free agency. First, we'll start with the subtractions. We lose Derek Roy to Nashville, which I'm not too terribly concerned about because, again, Derek Roy's season for us gradually went downhill as the season progressed. Mm-hmm. We lose Brendan Morrow to Tampa, which I was a little bummed about, also because I like to call myself a secondary Stars fan, and as the former Stars captain there, you know, I was a little bummed to see him go away from my top team there. Mm-hmm. We lose Adam Cracknell to Los Angeles, which he did score the first goal. The first goal in the playoffs last year. You know, Adam Cracknell has a lot of untapped talent, and quite frankly, I think it's kind of a shame to see him go to Los Angeles because I don't see him cracking anywhere in the no pun intended. I don't see him cracking the forward lineup anywhere in Los Angeles.
They're deep there, so.
Yeah, and you know he'd just probably end up playing in their AHL team. So that's kind of a shame there. I've been wanting to see Adam Cracknell play at his full potential, which is currently untapped at the moment. That I think he'd be a really great player someday. Mm-hmm. We lose a couple of others I can't think of. But I guess the big name, according to the fan base at least, we lose Vladimir Sobotka to the KHL. Now, I think this is the other thing I went against the majority of the fan base with, and I guess against the majority of people with opinions and facts or whatever about the NHL in general. I kind of don't feel like we'll be in a worse off place for losing Sobotka. I think nothing much will change. In fact, you know, I might even go as far as to say we might even be a little improved with Sobotka leaving. I didn't see much at all, really, from him the previous season. And, you know, during his whole time here, he's really only had one good season, one decent season, and that season was the shortened lockout season. Mm. And you know, and if you compare stats from that season, which was Sobotka's best year, to Berglund's worst year, which I think was probably the previous season, you'll find probably that Berglund's worst year was better than Sobotka's best year. It pains me to say it, I know, because Sobotka was definitely a fan favorite, but I kind of feel like that you could probably call Vladimir Sobotka just a tad bit overrated. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my opinion regarding that. And in the big question, the other big question regarding that was, for some reason, I have no idea why, was how Steve Ott could replace his role there. Now, I didn't really feel like I don't really feel like you could connect Steve Ott with this whole thing. I kind of feel like it was something that was probably I guess bound to happen, and Sobotka played on the second line. I don't ever see Steve Ott playing on the second line, except when he played on the first line in the playoffs, because our team was just in shambles because of injuries. But other than that, I would see Steve Ott being a fourth line person. So that's kind of our subtractions. Our additions, we'll get the biggest name out of the way. That was Paul Stastny. We signed Stastny to a multi-year contract. I guess it was 3 years, or I actually don't remember the contract at all.
I'll look it up,
he.
so.
I mean,
2018.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't really think there's anything much else I can say that that most people outside the NHL kind of sense from us. But I know I'm really excited to see Stastny come to St. Louis because he put up huge numbers in Colorado. He was one of their big players there. And he comes to St. Louis, which is essentially his hometown team. He was actually born in Quebec City, I think, but he played high school hockey in St. Louis, and he kind of he kind of adopted St. Louis as his hometown there. So he's coming back home essentially, and it's a really exciting thing. I think we could definitely see him on the first line there with Steen and Backus, but I guess we'll get to projected lineups later. Our medium kind of below Stastny or other big name pickups, Jori Lehtera. Now, the interesting thing was Jori Lehtera was originally drafted by St. Louis in the 2008 entry draft, but he never once suited up for the team. When he was drafted, he was sent to our AHL team, which was Peoria at the time, and I guess he would have rather played in St. Louis or something, and he went off to play in the KHL, where he put up pretty good numbers there in the KHL for a few years, but he finally decides to, Doug Armstrong, he finally gets to Lehtera and finally decides to just bring him back, and the exciting thing is I've always said that the last big piece of the puzzle we need would be somebody to center Schwartz and Tarasenko. And I think Jori Lehtera can be that guy. He's young, so he's kind of he's got that chemistry going with Schwartz and Tarasenko. And he was actually teammates with Tarasenko when they played for Novosibirsk, I think it was, in the KHL. So he is familiar with Tarasenko. And mixed in with since we finally signed someone that we drafted way back in 2008, and I don't think we want to lose him again by completely just throwing him away or whatever. I think he definitely have a starting roster spot on the team, probably second line there. Joakim Lidstrom. Let me pull up what I have for Lidstrom here. Joakim Lidstrom, we got him from Skellefteå of the Swedish Hockey League. And in the previous season, he got 23 goals, 63 points, and he was named through the whole season, the regular season and the postseason, he was named the MVP of the SHL last year, and he won a title with Skellefteå, and he was definitely a big part in that title. And he's actually still very familiar with the NHL. When he comes to St. Louis, this will be his third time playing in the NHL.
He had 3 years with the Columbus Blue Jackets, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And our other big name was Peter Muller. We picked him up from Cloton of the Swiss Hockey League. He didn't do too well with Florida, but then again, it's Florida. But after he played for Florida, he moved to Switzerland, and he just lit it up. 24 goals, 46 points, and he signed a one-year 2A contract with us. So he may see some time on the roster. I'm not too sure. And we did also sign Nate Prosser from Minnesota. But I don't see him cracking the roster at the moment. We're probably going to send him to Chicago or AHL team.
Okay.
And just yesterday, we made a. Most people might not think this is a big acquisition, but I'm actually fairly excited about this one. Yesterday, we picked up. Oh no, I'm blanking on his name. Help me out here, Dave.
Oh, what's his name? Oh.
I
had it written
Colin
Fraser?
someone. Yeah, Colin Fraser. We picked him up from Los Angeles, and he was a very solid fourth-line person in LA. I know that's kind of a oxymoron there, I guess, solid fourth-line person there, but I think this kind of clears up. This is really wonderful because. Again, he's a solid fourth-line person, and maybe, he could probably replace Steve Ott in his role in the fourth line if needed, which I think most of the fan base is kind of looking forward to. I think most of the fan base they're kind of not the biggest fan of Steve Ott because of his lack of offensive output. But I think with Colin Fraser now on the team, you can kind of put more firepower, put more depth into the forward group there.
Okay. Was that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're heading into the final section of this interview, which is how the next season is going to fall. So, first off, how do you think you're going to feel next season? How do you think it's going to happen? What's going to happen?
Now, the Central Division, they stock up, they get even tougher, they get even more daunting, Chicago picks up Brad Richards, Dallas picks up Spezza and Hemsky, Nashville picks up James Neal, who still, would cause problems, I suppose. Minnesota picks up Vanek. So the Central Division, it gets much tougher. But with the acquisitions we got, namely Stastny and Lehtera too. Don't sleep on Yuri Lehtera. With those acquisitions, I think we're still keeping up the pace there in the Central.
Mm.
And I still think we'll be a force to be reckoned with in the Central. I still think it'll be St. Louis and Chicago still kind of battling for that top spot there. Although, Colorado might again be an interesting one to look out for. They won the Central Division. They have a lot of talent. They get Jerome McGinley on top of that talent. They win the Central Division with a young team, so they're excited. They're definitely wanting to do that again. And I think they'll also get, God, I'm blanking on his name too. Who was the one that was Matt Duchene? I think they'll also get Matt Duchene back, back for the season. So Colorado will be loaded. They're looking for another run, so I think Colorado can kind of be the spoiler there in the Central. But St. Louis, I fully expect once again to see St. Louis and Chicago battling for the top spot. Once again, we gotta look out for the Colorado Avalanche.
Yep.
And and for the playoffs, one question I was thinking you'd ask me, Dave. You kind of dropped the ball on that one. Do I think the St. Louis Blues will make the playoffs again?
Getting to that? It's on my list.
Well,
I have an order, Blake. You know this.
well.
I have a run sheet I use.
Well, then I guess I'm asking myself this question then.
Blake, without thinking about it, does your team make the playoffs?
Yes, most definitely. You know, St. Louis is they're a perennial kind of playoff team. We don't have the crazy consecutive streak like Detroit does, but as in terms of making the playoffs, dare I say, we're kind of right up there with Detroit in just the overall terms of playoff continuity.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since we became a team in '67, St. Louis Blues has missed the playoffs less than 10 times. We're still in single digits in non-playoff years.
Then you're probably like 1 or 2 ahead of the Flyers because we've missed it a total of 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and
beating us.
And you know, once again, Lettera and Stastny, those are the two people I'm definitely looking forward to from our free agency pickups. I'm definitely thinking we'll make the playoffs again. Now, if we don't have the greatest showing in the playoffs themselves, that will remain to be seen.
Okay. So, what do you think your lineup's going to look like this upcoming season?
Okay, you know, I actually haven't really given this much thought, so bear with me because I'm probably just going to wing most of this. Though the first line definitely I'm going to feel is going to be Backes, because he's the captain, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Backes, Steen, and Stastny. The second line I'm going to feel is going to be Lettera as a center, centering Schwartz and Tarasenko. I think this is where we're going to find TJ Oshie on the third line. Sadly, I think.
TJ Sochi is going to be on the third line.
I would not. I may be a little bummed because, as you may expect, he is a fan favorite here. But I wouldn't be surprised. And you know, I actually did forget to mention TJ Oshie in the off-season or the offense breakdown. But one thing about TJ Oshie, and I hate to say this because it'll rile up the fan base, I guess. Yes, he is magnificent at shootouts, most definitely. But outside of shootouts, we still haven't seen a whole lot from him. He doesn't score a lot. You know, he'll score some. He'll score a decent amount. But when you're on the first line there and you're with Backes and Steen, you should probably score more than you did score. Mm-hmm. So unless we see more from TJ Oshie, except his absolutely amazing performance in the shootouts, which you know you can't rely on in the playoffs, sadly probably have to see him on the third line. He may not like that though, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Oshie. And his partners will probably be. Again, I do see Patrick Berglund being on the third line still. At this point in time, I would probably want Berglund relegated to the fourth line, but our fourth line, we really keep that tradition of the grit line there going, and I don't see Patrick Berglund being a very gritty player. So you know it'll be Oshie, and oh gosh, who else would it be? Um, I probably wouldn't be surprised to see Joachim Lidstrom maybe get some time on the third line. You know, kind of a surprise third line there. As at the moment, I don't really see anyone else that could fit that role. So for the third line, and this is probably the one that is going to be the least correct, I'm going to say Oshie and Lidstrom, with Berglund kind of just riding their coattails. And the fourth line, I'm going to see as being Ryan Reeves, Maxim Lapierre, and I'd most definitely like to see Colin Fraser there. But again, you know, he can put up the numbers, but again, our fourth line is mainly there for just to as the enforcer line. And I haven't seen much from Colin Fraser that tells me that he can be an enforcer. So, you know, it still probably end up being Steve Ott on that fourth line. Now that I think about it, though, you know, one thing we could see Hitchcock doing is trying to move Fraser up to the third line there and see how he does on the third line. Yep, I'm making a change to the third line there. Fraser, Oshie, Berglund. Again, that'd probably be the line that would be the least correct. And the fourth line would be Reeves, Lapierre, and Ott, our enforcer line there.
Okay.
The defensive pairings. Now, the defensive pairings will definitely be easy. I could rattle these off, but we'll make it a little slower. The first line will still probably be Pietrangelo and Bouwmeester, even though they kind of have different styles of well, no, they could probably have the same there. I guess you could call them hybrid, but they, especially Bouwmeester, they rarely play on the past the blue line. But still, you know, they have incredible chemistry together. I could see the second line, or the second pairing, well, actually, I'm kind of stumbling a bit here. I see Jackman still being on the second pairing. I'm not really quite sure who his partner can be, because I'd still expect it to be Shattenkirk and Gunnarsson on a pairing there. They could probably be on the third pairing there. And Jackman on the second pairing. I'm drawing blanks thinking who Jackman could be paired with. But Jackman on the second line, or on the second pairing with somebody. And I'd like to see oh, you know what? Ian Cole probably could be a name. Now, but the thing about Ian Cole, though, is he takes a lot of penalties. So I don't know if he could be very well paired up with Jackman, but that's probably the pairing I'm the least confident about. But I'll say it: Jackman and Cole, and then again Shattenkirk and Gunnarsson.
Okay. And then the goaltending's already set, as everyone
Yep.
knows.
Brian Elliott, Jake Allen.
Okay. Now into the kind of fun questions. Who do you think is going to score the most goals on your team?
It'll definitely be somebody on the first line.
Okay.
It could be Alexander Steen, because again, he, it could be his thinking is, he had that really great start to the season there, and he wants to not only replicate that, but he wants to keep it sustained through the whole season, just to kind of feel what it's like to be scoring like crazy throughout the whole season. But I could also be riding high with the excitement and optimism and say Paul Stastny for that one. but probably for goals, I would probably have to go with Alexander Steen for that one.
Okay. And who is going to be the most points?
Again, it'll probably be somebody on the first line.
You can't get one without the other, really.
Oh yeah. Which would be the person setting up the top goal scorer. I will ride the wave of excitement here, and I'll say Paul Stastny will get the most points because he can set up Steen all he wants, and we all know still that he's a pretty good goal scorer too. So he can get the pretty good amount of both, and get the lead in points there.
Okay. So, as you know, my favorite question to ask: say everything that can go wrong just does go wrong. Who is being thrown under the bus?
Now, for those of you that are unaware with the St. Louis fan base, the goalie is usually the big scapegoat. It doesn't matter who the goalie is. There were people that couldn't stand Yaroslav Halak. There were people that couldn't stand Brian Elliott. There were people that couldn't stand Jake Allen. There were definitely people that couldn't stand Ryan Miller. And going even further back, I get some of the more older fans telling me, they remember when people used to hate Curtis Joseph. The default answer would probably be the goalie, the starting goalie, which would be Brian Elliott. But outside of goaltending, because that's probably the obvious answer, I'll still, and this one could be both fan base and media too. I'd have to say Patrick Berglund, because again, he has that potential. He's had it ever since he was drafted, but he still has yet to show it. He still has yet to have an incredible breakout season.
Okay. If that's everything, then I guess we should go into the closing.
That is everything. And my final big talking point. Woof! I'm going to need a bunch of water or something after all this. Oh, boy. Once again, we'd like to thank Sadie for joining us this afternoon for her discussion with the San Jose Sharks.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. And you can find Sadie on Twitter. Her username is @HockeyBattler. And you can find her on Reddit. Her username there is Sadie, spelled Sad I. I is in like a pirate. Sad I. For the Wooden Ball Show, I am Blake. You can find me on Twitter. My username is @ShattenMyKirk. You can find me on Reddit. My username there is BTownBomb. For Dave, you can find him on pardon me, you can find him on Twitter. His username is @Blinson1. And on Reddit, his username is Blinson. And one other thing I did forget, Dave, you could...
the Pens and the Avalanche.
Oh, yes, the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Colorado Avalanche for next week. That should be an exciting one there.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, and for our HockeyCast, be sure to tune in Monday night, 9:30 Eastern, is it?
I think it's 9:30 Eastern for the Puck and Awesome show, yeah.
Yeah, 9:30 Eastern for the Puck and Awesome podcast. And once again, we do hear talk that the Our HockeyCast After Hour should be making a return eventually, but we don't have a set date on that. But once again, we'll be looking to get all the shows you heard from the previous season, KH Lockria, the Sunday recap show, the After Hour, and all the perhaps even some new shows.
Maybe.
And we'll be looking to up the quality of of shows put out here at our HockeyCast once the regular season gets back going. And for our HockeyCast, you can find us on Twitter. Our username there is @OurHockeyCast. You can find us on Reddit. Our subreddit address is Our HockeyCast. That is Our HockeyCast. You can find our website. That is OurHockeyCast.com, where you can take a listen at previous episodes from various Our HockeyCast programming. And you can do that same thing on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube name there is Our HockeyCast. Once again, be sure to tune in next week. We will overview the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Colorado Avalanche. For Dave Ball, I am Blake Wood. This has been Our HockeyCast. I messed that part up. This has been the Wooden Ball Show, and we are signing off.
Have a good night, everybody.